Welcome to episode 39 of Book Nerd Paradise, where we get to know an author as they tell us one of their favorite quotes, read from their work, pose a trivia question, and give away a book or two. Hi, I'm LRW Lee, author of the Andy Smithson Epic Fantasy Adventure Series. And just a reminder, both the prequel, Power of the Air's Passion, as well as book one, the ebook, which is Blast of the Dragon's Fury, are both available for free download on Amazon, Google Play, and Barnes & Noble. All right, so today we are all in for a treat. I'm excited to welcome YA fantasy author Elise Kova as our guest today. So I have to put a little plug in here personally first. So I ran into Elise while reading her debut novel, Air Awakens, and I was helplessly swept away by the world and the characters she created and their genuine and vulnerable relationships. I waited impatiently for the release of the second book in the series and was equally rewarded. She left it off at a particularly poignant moment, leaving me gasping and whimpering, to which my husband gave me a very strange look. So anyway, now we all have to wait for February in the next installment. But I digress. Anyway, so Elise has always had a passion for storytelling. She wrote her first novella, a high fantasy, in 6th grade. Over the years, she's honed her love of literature with everything from fantasy to romance, science fiction to mystery, and whatever else catches her eye. Elise lives in St. Petersburg, Florida, where she's currently working on the next installment in her debut YA fantasy series, Air Awakens. She enjoys video games, anime, tabletop role-playing games, and many other forms of geekdom. Please join me in welcoming Elise Kova.
I'm so excited to be here. This is like the first time I've been on YouTube, BookTube, whatever you want to call it, and I'm really happy to be here today. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, I'm very excited to see you in person, as I'm sure everybody watching is too.
I'm equally excited. Having met you on Twitter, it's been so cool getting to know the author community, and especially you. And
Cool. All right. Well, we are set to have an awesome program. I can already tell. You're going to be reading from your YA fantasy novel, Air Awakens, but book 2, Fire Falling. So that we can get a feel for the book and the series, if you wish, can you briefly summarize it for us?
Air Awakens follows a library apprentice, Vala Jarl, and Vala Jarl discovers that she has magic that is unlike any that's been seen for over almost 150 years. And her magic is the power to harness wind, but there's a lot more than that to it. That's kind of just the surface of the elemental magic system. And she is forced to decide if she's going to have her powers and become this sorceress, or if she is going to get rid of them and live the life she's always known. And of course, she's been taught to fear sorcery. So she's not immediately like, yeah, sorcery, yay. And as the book goes on, the decision is made for her. And in the second book, she is now headed off to war. And I won't spoil any more than that, because that's a little bit of a spoiler already. So the second book where we see her in the reading I'm going to do today is she is on the march to war with everyone else.
Cool. Okay. Well, buckle your seatbelts and we're in for a good ride tonight. You've also selected a favorite quote. If you would, share with us what it is and then tell us why it's a favorite.
So the quote that I selected, and I'm looking, I actually have a little necklace that has it written on it. So that's how much I love this quote. And my necklace is so dirty because I wear it all the time. But it says, "Not all who wander are lost." And this is a quote by fantasy novel god Tolkien himself. And I absolutely love this quote because I joke that I am painfully afflicted with wanderlust. I'm the person who graduated from my master's, sold everything I owned, quit my job, and moved to Japan because I wanted to have a life adventure. So I love that from a literal perspective of I tend to be a wanderer, but I also love it from the perspective that no matter where you're going, even if you don't know your final destination, you're not lost along the way. You're headed towards something, and you just have to have faith that you're going to get there.
Cool. No, that's great. And actually, when you think about it, life is nothing but a big journey, right? So hopefully we are wandering throughout our lives having some sort of adventure, right?
And I don't think any of us are lost.
And you're also going to be giving away a book. Would you tell us what you're giving
Yes.
away?
So I am going to be giving away a paperback copy of Air Awakens. I brought props, woohoo! And Air Awakens is the first book in the series of the same name, the Air Awakens series. And I will be giving away a paperback internationally, anywhere the book depository ships, and that will be sent via the book depository. But then I will also send a letter from me that has a signed book plate and a signed bookmark set in it. So you get a little bit from me and the book.
Cool. Oh, that sounds very good. All right. Well, thank you for that. That's
Of
awesome.
course.
For those of you who want to enter to win, make sure that you enter a comment in the comment section below here on YouTube. All you have to do is say what you liked about the episode, and that will be sufficient to enter you. Now, one thing I do ask is please do leave a Twitter handle or Facebook, somewhere to get a hold of you on Facebook, because one thing I find is most people don't pay attention to their YouTube messages. So just do me that favor, and that way, if you win, we can get a hold of you easily. You'll be reading from your novel, as I mentioned,
Yes.
Air Awakens. This is the second book, Fire Falling. Would you set up the portion you'll be reading from, and then go ahead and share with us?
So, as I mentioned, Vala Jarl is marching to war in this book. And on the path to war, she's having to learn a lot about both her magic and how to fight, because she's never been taught how to do that, while still coming to grips with the world that she's been thrust into. And of course, the relationships that she is crafting along the way, especially with a certain dark prince. And the passage that I'm going to read is they are toward about the halfway point on their march, the crossroads, and they see a sandstorm behind them, and the host is trying to outrun the sandstorm. A swirling mass of sand and death cut from earth to sky. The wind howled and consumed everything in its path, plunging the world into darkness. It stretched out on either side of them. The storm meant to swallow them whole and was about to begin its meal with the last rider at the end of the host. Vala saw the faces of those around her as they confronted their own mortality. Her gaze swept back until it fell on Aldrich. He had a tormented expression of frustration and desperation. Vala felt something pulse through her frantically. She would not let him die. As if feeling the intensity of her attention, Aldrich's head snapped back at her. Something on her face made panic overcome him. She barely saw the movement of his lips as he was going to say something. Vala turned lightning hard to the right, cutting between the legions. They could do nothing. None of them could do anything. If she didn't try, then it was over. Vala dug her heels into Lightning's sides as she cut through the shocked expressions to the outside of the column. Somewhere, someone was calling her name. Vala didn't look back. The wind was in her ears. It flowed through her, and despite all her fears, she did nothing to suppress it. This would not be like the last time. She would find wind and use it to save, not to kill. Vala snapped the reins. Faster, she demanded. Faster, she cried, watching the sandstorm creep toward the end of the column. Her heart threatened to burst from her chest, and Vala blinked the sand from her eyes. The soldiers of the rear legion stared at her in shock as she ran headfirst toward the storm. There was more shouting now from behind her. Vala glanced back. The Black Legion was in a roar calling for her. She turned her head away from them, almost at the end of the host. The wind whipped her hair, and soon lightning began to spook and fright at her pushes to advance. Vala cursed at the beast, begging it to carry her just a little farther. Through her words or her heels at his sides, Lightning obliged. She cut back onto the road when the last of Legion sprinted past her in the opposite direction. Their horrified expressions were all they could give her. Vala pulled hard and dismounted ungracefully, stumbling and recovering. Turning Lightning back to the host, she gave him a slap on his rear. The horse needed no further encouraging to run from the swirling sands. The soldiers kept going. She breathed a sigh of relief. They needed every chance they could get. If she should fail, they needed to keep pressing on. At the very least, she would buy them time. Vala turned and looked up at the titan of wind and sand, and she felt very small. Vala spread out her feet and planted them, bracing herself. She held out her bare hands into the wind, as if she could make a storm, she could end one. Vala felt the wind through her fingers. She felt the currents. They were part of her, and they would answer to her. Nothing prepared her for the impact of the storm. It was as though she was thrown from another roof, and Vala felt her shoulders pop from the strain. Her whole body was pressed down, and her knees trembled. Vala closed her eyes and grit her teeth. There was sand all around her, in her hair, in her ears, and in her nose, but it would end here, with her. She leaned into the storm, pushing back with all the force she had. In the chaos of sand and the roar of the wind, she couldn't open her eyes. Vala tried to reach outward to see if she had even managed to stop or slow the storm, but her senses were jumbled with the raw power she was trying to draw from. The first time she cried out was when one of her fingers snapped back. The sharp and sudden pain of her bones being pulled from their joints made her focus falter. She felt the wind collapse in on her, almost losing her balance. Vala forced her legs to straighten, straining against the pain. Another finger went, and then her shoulder threatened to give out. Her hands trembled, and Vala felt herself at the edge of exhaustion. With a cry, she did everything Eldrick had cautioned her against since her very first lesson with him. Vala threw herself into her channel, and with this singular thought that this storm ended here, that it would not reach her friends, it would not reach him. The moments that followed were a strange dichotomy of feeling. Like her body was dying and her mind was being born again. Light seared at the edges of her closed eyes and flooded her senses. With an almost audible click, she felt herself connect to the storm through her channel. She felt every edge of it, understood its violent gales. It was hers now, an extension of her magic that she possessed a fragile measure of control over. She struggled to move her arms. Vala felt the connection with her physical body wavering. She cried mentally, straining against the impending failure of her systems. A little more. It was both a prayer and a rally. A little more. Her arms out at her sides, Vala took a deep breath and felt the sand fill her lungs. She gave one last push to make the storm a part of her, and then turned that power inward, pushing it down into her channel and smothering it. The winds died, and silence filled her ears. Vala's legs gave out, and she collapsed to her knees, her arms dropping to her sides. Cracking her eyes open, she saw the blazing brightness of the sun against a blue sky. A small sob escaped her mouth, and she coughed, her lungs on fire. There was still a strange blur of light and dark playing at the edge of her vision. Vala felt her shoulder hit the stone of the road, and then her temple, and then the world went black.
Ooh, I love that scene. What's
Fun random fact of that scene, for anyone who likes the musicians Two Steps from Hell, they have a song called Strength of a Thousand Men, and that's what I wrote to for that scene.
Okay, there you go. Cool. I can see that. All right, very good. So our guest author last week, YA fantasy author Leland Artra, posed a trivia question for us.
So the question was, name that novel based off the rhyming clue. The rhyming clue was, the Martians' raid on Earth confirms their tripods are no match for germs. The correct answer is The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. Read more sci-fi.
Okay, so Elise, you have a trivia question for us. What is it?
So my trivia question is, what is the name of Severus Snape's father in the Harry Potter series?
Ooh, that's a really good one because I don't know if I know what that answer is. So, okay. Well, so if you don't know either, make sure that you subscribe to this YouTube channel so that you find out what the answer is next episode. Are there any final thoughts you'd like to leave with our listeners?
I guess the only thing I could think of is, one, if you've read Air Awakens or taken a chance on it, thank you so much, because Air Awakens has exceeded my every expectation when I went into publishing it. And that's kind of the second thing that I just want to leave everybody with. If you're an author or you're an aspiring author or you're trying to get your work out there, seriously, don't give up. I can't tell you how many times and setbacks that I had, and now I'm kind of having one of those moments every day that I wake up going, oh my God, so many people have read my book, and it's really weird and it's really cool. And if you put in the work and you put in the time and you put in the effort and you believe in yourself and your story, you're going to get there. And I have faith in you. I don't know you, but I have faith in you. So that's just, I guess, never give up, because it would be such a shame if you did.
That's great. Thank you for those words. Yes, encouragement to authors, absolutely. Because sometimes you're toiling away, and sometimes you wonder if it's making any difference. But if you persevere and you get it out there, then you can truly find out what difference it can make. So that's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah, thank you for those. That's great. Well, I hope you've enjoyed getting to know Elise Kova just a little bit. I'm LRW Lee, author of the Andy Smithson Epic Fantasy Adventure Series. And as I mentioned at the beginning, be sure to get yourself a free ebook of both book one as well as the prequel if you haven't done so already. Click the button to subscribe to the Book Nerd Paradise YouTube channel so you don't miss upcoming authors, giveaways, and answers to trivia questions. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode, and I look forward to seeing you again next Monday.